Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 8th Tiang Distinguished Lecture Series. My name is Cindy, and I will be your MC today. Thank you for taking the time to join us online. Today's event is organized by the Yobun Kim Mind Science Center with support from Mr. Tao Ling Tan and donors who supported Mind Science Center's mission to improve mental health and resilience across all ages. The center takes an upstream and evidence-based approach to optimize the cognitive performance, build emotional resilience, and promote mental well-being through translational research and community-based intervention. Fully dependent on grants and donations, the center is deeply grateful for all your generous support. Kindly note that this event will be recorded for archival and marketing purposes. NUS and our partners may use some of the images and videos in online and print publications. Should you need any assistance, please use the chat function and my colleague will be assisting you. Without further ado, I would like to invite the Tan Bioc Lim Professor in Psychiatry and Neuroscience at the National University of Singapore, Vice Chairman of Yobun Kim Mind Science Center, Professor Kwa Yi-hyok, to give the opening lecture. Professor?
Thank you, Cindy. I understand there are many participants from neighboring countries, including Malaysia, Indonesia, even as far as Australia and China. For many of you who are not in Singapore, it is now afternoon and it's a beautiful day here in Singapore. This is the 8th Tao Kian Seng Distinguished Lecture Series, and it started off about 8 years ago, and our first speaker then was Professor Norman Sartorius from the World Health, and later on we have Professor Wang Ganggu, a historian, Professor Jeremy Montorio, a jazz musician, and also Professor Rati Mahindran, our own psychiatrist here, and also Mr. Abdullah Tamuji, former Speaker of Parliament. So we have a wide variety of people from different backgrounds, all for mental health. Today, we want to emphasize on campus mental health. It's very, very important because there are many people watching now from the campus itself, not only students, but also academics and also admin staff in the university. And the university is a wonderful place to work. However, during the pandemic, we noticed that there are a lot of difficulties, mental health problems. So this series of lectures that's coming up will focus on these issues and, more importantly, how can we help and prevent. The first speaker of the 8th, who's going to deliver the 8th Tao Tin Seng lecture is Professor John Wong, who is the director of the Mind Science Center, the Yeo Boon Kim Mind Science Center. Professor John Wong is a child psychiatrist, trained as a doctor here in NUS, and he went on to England, to King's College London, for his training in child psychiatry. And he came back and worked for a while with the army, rose to the rank of a rear admiral. And we're very glad that he has moved on to university and doing a wonderful job as the director of the Mind Science Center. So now we shall, before I go on, let me tell you something about about Tao Kian Seng. He's belonged to the pioneer generation and came here before the war. And his son, the Tao Hing Tan, has given a lot to the Mind Science Center. And for his generosity, we named this special lecture after his father. So now I shall call upon Professor John Wong to deliver his lecture.
Thank you, Prof. Kwa. Very good afternoon to our colleagues and friends and participants of the webinar. So as Prof. Kwa has mentioned, we are most grateful and indebted to Mr. Tao for initiating this lecture series in honor of his father to remember his legacy of the good work that he has done for his career, for his family, and for Singapore. So thank you, Mr. Tao, for your gift and support of Mind Science Center in conducting this series of lectures. The lecture is entitled Campus Mental Health, and the focus is to understand youth resilience and mental health challenges with a focus of the campus students that commit 3 to 4 years of the prime of their life in the university educational system. So the scope of the presentation, as what Prof. Kwa has earlier alluded to, it is important that I'm not just doing a overview on the campus mental health in terms of youth resilience and mental health challenges, but it is also important to include two of my colleagues, Dr. Lynette and Mr. Goh, who will speak on important initiatives that NUS campus has embarked on for the last 4 years to address the increasing importance of mental health and mental wellness and well-being. So I would like to start by giving a quick overview of what constitutes mental health and well-being, and also to process what are the demands and challenges that a university student would encounter, what are the factors at risk, and the demands of living in campus, on campus, as well as off campus. But we also recognize that university students are really the elite, academically high achieving individual at the age of 16 to 18 years old entering university education system. And as they spend the 3 to 4 years of their prime of their life in the campus, they will count not just with their talent in academic learning, their aptitude, the diversity of the background, cultural, as well as neurodiversity. And of course, as we recognize, each of us will come as our psychological profile and whatever challenges or issue or disadvantage that we may have in our early life. And of course, living in campus and studying in campus will have additional demand in this phase of our lives or of the student's life, be it financial relationship or even career or even the study workload. And these are things important to examine. And last but not least is really to look at what are the challenges. What is it that the campus students, the university students can do for themselves, what they can do for their peers in the campus. And as some of us who are privileged to work in the university campus, be it faculty, be it in the schools, be it in the residential colleges, what can be done to build this ecosystem of mental wellness in the campus. And last but not least is to really understand the concept of how knowing our own profile, how we self-discovered, how we self-determine can allow us to actualize and optimize our potential. And so some of this will be covered by my two other colleagues, Dr. Lynette and Mr. Goh later on. But I will first start by addressing what constitutes mental health and well-being. So in a simple defining of the health and well-being is really having good mental health or being well mentally is not just being absence of illness or disease, but rather is a state of overall physical and mental well-being. And there is a saying that you can't have good physical health without good mental well-being. And similarly, it is very difficult to be mentally well and physically disadvantaged. And also to note that the idea or construct of health and well-being can be culturally based. And of course, many a times it relates to how one enjoy one's life, as well as having the ability to cope with and to bounce back from stress and sadness when the rough patches come our way. It is important, and everybody talk about mental health and mental wellness or mental disease. It is important that all of us actually do experience different mental state in the course of time. And let me get the it is important to recognize that from time to time, we are usually in a very comfortable, pensive, thoughtful state where we don't experience distress or problem or any illnesses. And I think most of us spend quite a lot of time in the blue zone. Everybody talk about blue zone now for the aging. And indeed, blue zone is a very, very calming place to be in. But from time to time, we may run into a difficult moment where we can feel or experience emotionally upset, some sadness, some disappointment. Sometimes we feel angry about things don't go our way, feeling bitter about a missed opportunity, feeling distressed, or even sometimes being despondent. And those are moments of distress that we can experience from time to time. It may not be that long lasting, may lasts for moments, lasts for a few days, and then when it's resolved, the mental health distress goes away. But we do experience inner signal of stress. When things are a little bit more prolonged and more ingrained into our life, where sometimes we feel heartbroken, we feel demoralized, we do grieve over loss of significant others, significant items that we object that we missed or we lose, and in the state of despair. And it may last for days or weeks, and that constitute a mental health problem, because this is really a much larger stressor than usual. And occasionally, when things are really not going our way, we can experience mental illness. And this is where it constitutes a constellation of conditions arising from the interplay of what we are vulnerable genetically, what we are at risk from environmental factors. And that becomes serious, and it becomes a illness or disorder. So it's important that to recognize that individual, whether it's students or adults or even elderly, we do experience moments of distress. Times we may experience or encounter problems. Occasionally, sometimes we actually do suffer from a moment of episode of mental illness. But generally, when we recover, we do go back to a pensive state. So what are the demands and challenges during university education in a journey of 3 to 4 years in a campus, whether it's undergrad or even subsequently when we return for postgraduate in a campus lasting 2 to 5 years? What is important is that over the last 10 years, it is very well reported and recognized that there is an increasing trend of significant distress experienced by young people in the university campus as well as the larger society. As you can see, just in UK alone, 1 in 5 young adults experience severe distress. And in a university student, the mental health problems have almost tripled in a report just published in September this year. And this actually is observed globally, not just in US, not just in UK, but even in other East Asian countries, university whom we interacted with, they also experience a similar phenomenon. And what are the main concerns of mental health issues? Obviously, most importantly, anxiety and depression top the 2 list. Stress, relationship issue, trauma, family, interpersonal functioning, grief or loss, academic performance, adjustment, to new environment, eating difficulties or problems, self-esteem, confidence level is being compromised, sometimes attentional difficulties in the study or emotional dysregulation. So why is it important for university to pay attention to the mental health and well-being of our students? This data set actually is very alarming. When they survey the students as to what will cause them to consider stopping their course, you find that the top 2 reasons of triggering students of thinking of stopping their coursework are emotional stress and personal mental health reasons. This far exceed issues like no longer interested, do not have the money, inflation make it not affordable. So this itself is a major impediment that is becoming more prevalent in many students who struggle to finish their coursework and thinking of giving up. And that obviously is going to be very disruptive to our educational system in the university as well as to the students' professional development. Locally, we see the same picture. As a clinician, we work with students, we work with faculty, we work with peers. We see that academic demands, workload, deadlines, tests and exams, anxiety, grades, finances, tuition fees, study loan, inflation of living expenses, which is a major concern these 2 years, relationship, whether it's pre-existing family or difficulties of peer or romantic challenges, living away from home for international students, or sometimes for even our local residents who have the comfort of having their own room and live in their own nucleus family, living with many other new strangers can be a challenging experience. Sometimes they have to learn to negotiate with their roommates or their flatmate. And of course, when they are near graduation, what are their post-graduation plan, choosing a career, finding a job. And of course, not forgetting that in a neurodiverse environment, we do have students who actually have had challenges of neurodevelopmental conditions like ADHD or autism trait. With their academic strength and high aptitude, they deserve a place and they have earned a place in the university, and they are not excluded or discriminated. But they do need help and support to continue to pursue their learning journey in the university despite having neurodevelopmental condition. So what are the common issues that we see in campus? And it becomes a semi-crisis or even a crisis for the student and for their mental health professionals, caregiver, or even for their faculty members. One is when there's cumulative and convergent effects of family, psychosocial stress, or even academic stress. And then it's actually sometimes piled on the background of presence of some psychiatric, psychological vulnerability or disadvantage to begin with. And second, important issue that we look out for are individual resilience and how supportive the environment can be to buffer and protect this individual against the presence of mental health problems and to cope with academic stress. So the challenges of youth and emerging adult obviously is an important phase of this personal growth. And this help us understand why university students or college students can be at a vulnerable phase. As we look at the psychosocial developmental phases, as what we understood from Erik Erikson, youth is described and seen as a period of transition from dependency of childhood to adult's independence. And this is a very important transition from dependency to independence, and it gives liberation. But on the other hand, it is also a phase where the youth will have to learn and be aware of the importance and the leverage of interdependency of members in a community. And you look at these three phases from high school and into teenagers and to young adult, you find that with the drive and the energy, the youth and the young adult will start to experiment and explore and be driven to try many new things. That's why it's very industrial. On the other hand, we actually also recognize that this is a phase that they reflect on themselves and develop an identity. And this is also a phase where it gives opportunity to develop social relationship and emotional relationship and social intimacy and relationship, romantic intimacy. And this is a wonderful period of growth for many teens and young adults. But of course, there are times things may not go the right way or go their way, and people may feel inferior. People may be confused about our own role and identity. People may feel that they are isolated or even marginalized. And all this can cause significant emotional and psychological distress. The other important thing that happened this phase is really the generation effect. Of course, every generation will say that it was stronger and the younger are weaker, which is actually not really that true, but definitely there are intergeneration differences. So what are the unique characteristics of this generation? They call it the Generation Z, the Zoomer, and they usually are born in the year of 97 to 2015. So this is really the age group of our high school student and the current cohort of our university student. There's nothing wrong with being in Generation Z, but there are certain described profiles that make them a little bit more privileged and different from their predecessor generation. So one, obviously, what was described is that the early socialization with digital world, fast food, political and economic stability do provide a safer, more secure, physically resource-abundant environment that encourage early adoption of digital device, the usage and services. And of course, the easy access through the digital network provides unlimited resource of knowledge. But of course, it comes with social content, sexualized content, easily available personal entertainment in their own personal space, sense of autonomy with greater emphasis of self and ease of withdrawal in the personal space, which is good and fine. But of course, sometimes we do observe that it does impact negatively on some of their emotional wellness. And of course, sometimes it impacts negatively on their sense of autonomy when it doesn't go the way they wanted or the way they expected. Second, in this generation, they are privileged and usually are supported by parents who are hardworking, who have achieved or arrived in their career development and dual income family. But that also means that parents probably have less time or little time in the involvement of their growing up years parenting. And of course, sometimes this family with less parent-child interaction and involvement may put them at risk of not learning to self-regulate or their behavior or emotional wellness, and that can be a disadvantage for some of these adolescents growing up. So these are quite a unique feature compared to their preceding generation. So taking a step back and look at the more holistic and more positive view of youth is that despite the generation unique feature that they were endowed with digital world, devices, resources, food, security, but what is the real value for them is really to recognize that this is an important phase, whether it's their generation or their predecessor generation. This is an important phase for them to grow up in this period, to develop holistically, to allow them to grow and develop in their personal space, social space, as well as educational space. And the university actually provides a lot of opportunity for this to happen. And this is to allow them to develop their voice, their influence, their place in society, so that they can reach their potential. And this is very heartening when I came across this clip talking about sense of purpose, because when we work with many of the students, whether it's school-age children in secondary school or JC or university, sometimes they say, I really do not know what's the purpose of my life or my being here in a campus or in a school. But when I came across this, I was very heartened, is that how can they realize their potential and sense of purpose by knowing that they can live by choice and not by chance? They can choose to be motivated and not manipulated. They can choose to be useful and not be used. They can choose to make changes but not excuses. They can choose to excel but not compete. And they can choose self-esteem rather than self-pity. And they can choose to listen to their inner voice rather than the random opinion of others that can shape their mood or emotion of the day. So what are the real problems we face in a public health setting as we look at so-called the prevalence or the occurrences of mental health issues? In this chart, it does tell us that about a third of former mental health disorder actually first develop in the first 10 to 20 years of their life. And this includes depressive illness, this includes anxiety, this includes bipolar, and of course, some of the other psychological conditions like social anxiety and so on. So university student age is part of the continuum of secondary school age children, where the vulnerability continue to be at risk. When we did a national survey, we found that for those who were asked about whether they have significant mood issue that of clinical significance, it was quite notable to register a 15% of the respondent had mood and affective issue. And a staggering 41.7% actually had anxiety symptoms that is significant enough to cause a distress or cause a problem. And behavioral disruption was as high about 6.5%, and attentional issue that could affect their learning experiences was about close to 6%. And physical problem, not feeling well physically, but attributable to the emotional distress is also around 6%. So when you look at all this so-called percentage of occurrences of internalizing and externalizing experiences, which can adversely affect or impact negatively their emotional state, it is something to cause us to sit up and look at the data. And it is not surprising that we found that individual with do at least both mood and anxiety symptoms was at a significant level of close to 13%. That means basically 1 in 6 adolescents before they enter university do experience mood and anxiety symptoms that are of clinical significance that can be distressing to them. So assuming that all these students have equal chance of entering university, so we can expect that any of the university student intake in the first year may have as common as 1 in 6 do have experiences that negatively impact them emotionally. And this is a normal happening or common happening. So this slide just basically recaptured that about 12% of children just before they enter university, during the 11 to 18 years old of life, they do have this experience of at least one disorder. And this is important to cause us to look out for them, to provide them with the necessary access to care, to provide them the environmental support and buffer challenges that may come their way, as it happens to any university student or even any student not in university but in their age group. But when you look at the real serious problem of a disorder where it's treatable as an illness, then of course the numbers are not that different before COVID. This is about 5% for depression, 7% for anxiety, and then attention problem about 2.5%. And of course, the top 3 disorder per group, the mood, almost half of them, of the 5%, are major depressive disorder. But the good significant group actually has adjustment disorder, depressed mood. And then for anxiety, a good percentage of them are generalized anxiety disorder. And that's about 2.75% out of 7%. And then social anxiety is about 1%. So to put it into perspective, when we do receive new students, we are probably assuming that every 18 years old with a fair chance of getting university coming in, at least about 40% of them would probably have experienced anxiety symptoms that have clinical significance, and it may come from this range of mental distress, mental health problem, or mental disorder. But when you start counting only mental disorder, obviously it comes down to about 7%. Whereas when we talk about mood, the whole group here is actually 15%. But we start counting the severe one, actually the group narrow down to just about 5%. So 1 in 20 students coming into the university educational system technically would likely be have experience of a depressive disorder. So the whole idea is that mental health distress or mental health problem or mental health illnesses is not uncommon. Rather, it's pretty common. It ranges from 1 in 6 to 1 in 3, depending whether it's a depressive mood or whether it's anxiety. On top of that, there are also demands and challenges of stress in life. And this is very clear that any perceived stress will impact negatively on the mental well-being. And when we did the survey, we found that almost 0.7, the correlation is 0.7, where any increase in the stress, it will increase mental impact negatively on the mental well-being. And it's interesting to note that the stress level of our children from 11 to 18 years old before they come to university, it starts to climb after PSLE is settled for a while, and start to climb again in Sec 3, Sec 4, and about JC1, and then it plateau, and then basically stay around here. All right. So when they come to university, they have already experienced quite a significant level of stress. And when we look at the demographic, the boys, the girls actually experience and reported higher stress level. All right. And the stress, as I said, it peaks about 16 to 17. And then I think it's important to monitor and track our university students and the young adult, how this stress level perceived, if they continue to plateau or they actually stabilize. And the other important comment is about for any student, the academic stress, perceived academic stress is another important indicator to monitor and to measure. And what our national study found was very interesting. For young children below in primary school P5 and P6, you find that the academic stress actually are largely driven by others. That means parents, teachers. The expectation of parents and teachers seems to impact them much greater, for they are afraid of disappointing adult figures in this age group. But interestingly, once they go into secondary school, the stress level of academic expectation actually is very much driven by themselves. Whether it's already imprinted in them when they're young, or they have discovered their own inspiration and aspiration that they want to drive themselves. So you find that in university students, it is highly likely that a lot of the academic stress are self-driven rather than from external parties. And we talk about stress, we also want to talk about resilience. Resilience is a very interesting concept that describes the ability to adapt, to do well after an adverse event or through a period of adversity. And the concept and the construct is very important to recognize that it is a dynamic process of interaction between individual factors, such as their own temperament. Some temperament are more susceptible to stress. Some temperament are a little bit more resilient to stress. And of course, environmental factors, their family, their peers, their friends, and the interaction actually would determine how resilient they can be. Of course, it is a spectrum. It can change over time. It's something that one can learn and develop resilience. And of course, the resilience may look different at different settings. What I think the construct reminds us is that it is not something that whether a person have or don't have and that's it, because it can be learned, it can be developed. It is not a fixed character trait. And more importantly, having developed resilience doesn't mean that one is free from experiencing negative emotion. So while it's important to develop resilience, but it is also important to recognize a construct. So obviously there are tools out there to profile resilience. And this is the part where we need to understand that the resilience itself, the tool can allow us to map the area of strength so that the individual could decide how they could tap on those strengths during difficult times. But they also can alert us to the area of resilience that we may not have developed, that we can continue to develop or build upon. And it is this growing of resilience capacity will allow teenagers and even young adult university students to cope better in adversity. This is an instrument that the Department of Psychological Medicine developed, the 10-domain Singapore Youth Resilience Skills, that helps to profile resilience of teenagers. This is a typical teenager profile, and obviously the teenager has not fully developed all aspects of the 10-domain of self-image, optimism, relationship, social support, humor, emotional regulation, spirituality and faith, personal confidence and responsibility, personal control, flexibility, positive coping, commitment, and perseverance. So obviously some areas this teenager has developed pretty adequately, some area may not be. But this is really a profile where individual may not have developed in many areas, but a little bit better, well equipped in one area of resilience factor, that is the flexibility. Then, of course, this is really the super boy or super girl, where all areas of resilience are pretty well developed or well developed. So out of the 10 areas in our studies, we found that there are 4 factors that really have high resilience score, are positively correlated with lower symptoms of distress. Positive self-image and optimism. The inverse correlation with depression and anxiety is as high as negative 0.6. Personal control, relationship support, and social support, and emotional regulation. So this will be the top 4 resilience domain that we definitely would encourage youth and emerging adult to focus on in their growth mindset and growth theory, to develop, give priority for that. And of course, the data does provide evidence that the stress and resilience are inversely correlated. So with a higher resilience, they tend to have lower level of perceived stress and lower level of distress. So how do we actualize and optimize potential and help our students optimize potential? Obviously, it's good for them to recognize themselves, their own profile. It's good for them to embark on the discovery journey while they're in campus. And of course, importantly, as they embark on their university education, they also learn to self-determine. And what is important is that in our local context, we do have a unique situation that in our campus and in all schools alike, you find that this was a very interesting survey that economists did in 2015. That year, Singapore scored top in the world in the PISA test for 15 years old. But what was interesting is that they went to all the countries and did a quick survey of asking 2 questions. Asking the student, question number 1 is, if I'm well prepared for a test, I feel very nervous or anxious. And second question they ask is that I want to be the best student in my class. So they tap on 2 constructs. One is competitiveness, the other is anxiety. So you find that in the top right quadrant is the quadrant of highly competitive and highly anxious countries. Singapore obviously top the PISA, and the PISA, the higher the PISA score, the darker the blue. Singapore is here. And then some countries in our Asia Pacific area are also in the top right quadrant of being highly competitive, of being highly anxious. But what is interesting is to look at the left bottom quadrant to see which are the countries that actually are more chill. They are less competitive and less anxious, but at the same time, they are all scoring very high in their PISA. So this is a very useful reminder that we can be very good student, but we still can be very chill and not anxious. Contrary to the belief that we must stress our students so that they are on their toes all the time in order to perform. So I think this is a good reminder for educators like us not to believe wrongly that we must stress our student in order to produce the best researcher and best clinician, but really to provide a nurturing environment, help them to be chill, but to learn in a very confident way and yet excel in their learning. And this is the slides that remind us that physiologically, we actually recognize that the nervous system and the hormonal system does work in synchrony. When we are peaceful, we are calm, we are pensive, the system works very well, where we have increased digestion, we have increased gut mortality, we are resistant to infection, we have increased immune response, we rest well, we recuperate well, we have health, all right, and we are involved in social bonds that encourage social support and strength, and there is less defensive responses. So this is really the best state to be in, where there is very strong and positive social engagement in our daily routine and life. But then when we are stressed, obviously we go into this fight and flight response. Of course, when it's excessive, we will shut down socially. And if we go into overdrive, then the parasympathetic system will kick in the right upper box here. You can see that we would be experiencing a lot of anxiety, feeling numb. We have decreased heart rate. Our blood pressure would have gone up, but now come down. Not because we are peaceful, but no, the system is shutting down. The muscle tone, stiff, and so on and so forth. So this is the classic illustration of how the physiological and neurological response actually manifests the inner state of emotional experiences and distress. So some years back, we always fondly remember our former provost, Professor Ho Teck Hwa. He was our provost from 2018 to early this year. And at the time, he was very interested and concerned of how we can help our university students and staff to build a mental health friendly university and support the holistic health and growth. And so he convened an advisory panel to look at the issue. And it was a very interesting exercise that really later on when Mr. Goh shared the good work and the important work that health and wellness, well-being programs that his team and Dr. Andrew's team are doing the last 3.5 years speaks a lot of the important initiatives that has helped to transform the campus in a very positive way. So the guidance on Provost then was, how can we move from a reactive model of care to a preventive model? Secondly, how can we expand the scope of mental health programs? Thirdly, how can we build partnerships? Because we shouldn't be just doing it alone. Lastly, how can we continue to invest in mental health research? So first thing was really a review of effectiveness of program. There are so many programs out there. There'll be more programs coming out. But the key issue is, how do we provide a comprehensive range of programs with measured effectiveness and make program widely available through digital, internet, intranet, and social media so that it can reach out to everyone, every corner of the campus. And importantly is to also consolidate initiatives and improve the program accessibility. Second is really to, how can we understand and recognize students' stress, the source of stress. Different segments of student population also experience different kind of stress. For example, international students and local students can often present with different stressors. Next is to how to really continue to sense through interaction with the students. For example, regular planned pulse survey to understand and gain regular sensing of their distress or source of their stress, and to hold regular focus group engagement and feedback. And importantly, to also differentiate the outreach between postgraduate students who are at a different phase of their emerging adult years, as well as doctorate students. And the third thing they look at was really to look at the mental health literacy. Prior to COVID pandemic, there was a lower awareness of mental health literacy nationally and globally. But I think with the pandemic, people have raised their awareness of mental health literacy. So how can we create a seamless and continuous journey to attain greater mental health literacy across the campus and help students learn to recognize that they should seek help and not be worried and feel that you'll be stigmatized. And of course, importantly, besides students, staff can also learn how to respond when students come to them for help. So there were introductory model on emotional health issues, self-assessment tool were provided to them. You can hear more from Mr. Goh later on, and embark on the journey of mental health literacy. The mental health services was also focusing more to improve access to care, to remove the apprehension about being stigmatized by the university, that it's not just okay, but it is good to recognize that we need help and we are receiving help. And mental health professionals and counselors are provided more clinical time to do counseling and clinical intervention rather than administrative work, and to train student supporters as alternative source of mental health help so that it can be even more accessible. And I think wellness and prevention is really key because we are moving towards preventive mode. So encourage all staff and students not living in the campus to engage in student life and culture. And promotion of student life is something that is really happening the last few years, a lot more than previously. And OSA and colleagues there have really done a lot together with Dr. Andrews and Mr. Goh's team to promote value of community support. Next is really students to explore other passions besides academic. So this is very important, as what Minister Chan Chun Seng, our Minister of Education, has alluded to the last 2 years, is that there are other important markers and definition of success and not just grades. And emphasis on student life was mentioned earlier on, and reevaluate the academic demands on students so that it's kept at a manageable level. Last but not least, we must never forget the importance of faculty members and staff members in the campus. We need to encourage and recognize them because many of them go the extra mile caring for students. And we also must encourage them to go beyond purely transactional relationship, because I'm your teacher, I'm your supervisor, I'm your mentor, but rather to co-create a caring community with kindness with the student. So the take-home point of my presentation is that in campus mental health, as what our former provost has alluded to, is how can we inspire our campus students to feel good about the things they do? How can we co-create an environment and show them that they are loved and valued? And how do we allow them to release and heal their emotion when they are hurt at times? But last but not least is to really the feather in the cap is how do we celebrate the success with them? So with this, I end here and thank you for your attention. I hand over to the MC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor John Wong. I'm told that when I was listing the past Tao Tian Seng speakers, I missed out two names: Professor Hong Hai from NTU and Professor Hu Kyong Tak from SGH. And as Professor John Wong mentioned, the wonderful work done by our previous provost, who is now the NTU president, on trying to build up the resilience within NUS. We also enlisted a large group of people to help out to form this team. And we're going to welcome Mr. Goh Zhen Jing, who is the deputy head of the health and wellness team. He was trained as a psychologist here at NUS, and he stayed on to do clinical psychology. And I'm glad he's here to help to build up this team. So, Mr. Goh, it's all yours.
Thanks, Prof. Kwa, and thanks, Prof. Wong. Really appreciate the research that you and your team are doing. It's really a sobering statistic to hear that one in 3 or 1 in 6 young people are experiencing clinically significant mental health concerns. But I'm also thankful, as Prof. Wong has already said, that NUS is sparing a lot of resource into developing the health and well-being and helping our students and even our staff support their health and well-being. So without further ado, I'm just going to go into my presentation on what NUS is doing about mental health and well-being. So the Health and Wellbeing Office, what's our responsibility or mandate? Well, we are here to care for 13,000 staff, 48,000 students across 115 departments. That's over 60,000 people, a significant mandate indeed. And our vision is to be a global practice leader in health and well-being to shape compassionate and thriving communities. We do this by equipping, educating, and restoring one connection, one conversation, and one intervention at a time. With the recommendations for what NUS could be doing for well-being that Prof. Wong already mentioned, we set out to set up a mental health framework that we call the Well NUS framework, which is a systematic approach to identifying potential gaps in our mental health and well-being services. And how we do this is by charting a person's personal journey through their mental health journey to systematically map out who are the relevant stakeholders and relevant initiatives that we can kind of plug in to support an individual, whether they are student or staff. How we have done this is if you look at the left column, is to look at the levels of culture and strategy, system and infrastructure, support services and resources, as well as the relevant interventions and key stakeholders who can be providing that sort of support. We're very thankful that the most senior leaders, including our president, our former provost, of course, was mentioned, and many other senior leaders are looking into this aspect. We have a much more detailed slide on this, but for the purposes of today, these are the broad areas that we have been looking at through our framework. Now, of course, students occupy the largest proportion of our community. We have over 48,000 students in NUS, undergraduate and graduate. And the Counseling Center in the last academic year saw that these were the 5 biggest concerns among students: relationships, which could be among family members, between intimate partners, with university staff, or the issues of lacking social skills and social support. Then followed by anxiety, right, and its various forms. Earlier on, Prof. Wong already said, like, young people, 40% of young people have experienced clinically significant anxiety in their life. What more when they come to university, when stress actually tends to increase. Next is the issue of personal concerns such as self-image, self-worth, high expectations of self or perfectionism, existential concerns. And in this internet age and social media age, self-image becomes a really big thing. Then there's, of course, mood and depressive symptoms, anger and other emotional issues, and academic stress. Now, what are the resources that we have put into place? We've had a university counseling service that has been running for quite a number of years already for our students. We have the University Health Center, which has our doctors and including our psychiatrists that provide medical or psychiatric care to our students. Something that's really important to note is that we have communicated with many top universities around the world. And one thing they have highlighted to us is it's actually very rare to have psychiatrists on campus treating students. So this is something that we are privileged to have. Then we also come from the angle of looking at what our insurance can provide. And we do have student insurance that covers mental health care, which is very quite new in the insurance industry just in the last few years. So besides the medical insurance, we also have a Lifeline NUS, which is a 24/7 hotline for life-threatening psychological emergencies. So that's something that's manned by our trained staff. In the office of hours, it'll be by our trained case managers or counselors. After office hours, we outsource it to an organization that does also train their staff in terms of mental health response during psychological emergencies. Additionally, for student resources, we do have student peer supporters. Just now, Prof. Wong alluded to a recommendation that we should train peers in the community. So we train our student peer supporters to provide support. We have student support managers, which are staff members who are based in the faculties and schools, able to also provide students with mental health support. In addition to that, a team that we have set up quite newly on campus are our residential wellness managers. These are staff members who provide care and support to students who are living on campus, whether they stay in halls, residential colleges, or the various residences. And once a year, and this is something that just got completed, also is our wellness festival, a month long of activities occurring in October, where we promote health and well-being in the college and the university. Just now, Prof. Wong also said that it's important to take care of our staff, not just our students, because our staff are responsible for educating our students and also providing care to them. So we need to take care of our staff. For that, we have clinical psychologists, that we call well-being specialist partners that provide therapy and counseling to our staff members. For staff who don't feel comfortable seeing somebody on campus, they can also be seen by an external service provider. So this service is called NUS HUT, and our staff can reach out for counseling support through NUS HUT. They also have an app. We are using the Intellect app for this that has sort of well-being and mental health modules. They can do mindfulness exercises or get a tailored recommendation for well-being activities that they can participate in the course of their day. We also have group insurance coverage for staff, where they can claim up to $1,000 for outpatient mental health care and $10,000 for inpatient mental health care. We also run a 6-month-long campaign. Previously, it was called Are You Okay? This year, we call it Kind Mind, which is about creating a culture to destigmatize mental health concerns. And we have also done pre and post measures of the impact of these campaigns. We have a manager's guide to mental health. How can managers take care of the mental well-being of their colleagues? There is good research to show that managers do have a significant role in the mental health of their staff, or they might be a primary cause of stress to staff members as well. Besides that, we do have workshops. One of the key workshops we do is called Supporting Individuals in Difficult Times. This SIDT module trains staff members to learn skills on how to care for fellow staff or students, such as being aware of warning signs of mental health distress, how to be a good listener and good supporter, as well as resources that they can refer to, the staff and students to refer to on campus. And we have also trained peer staff supporters. The training is a 2-day training. And in addition to that, we also believe in supporting this PSS community. So every month or 2 months, there will be a PSS circles where staff members can sign up to get support from the community of peer staff supporters. For departments and teams that are experiencing difficulties and challenges, such as feeling overwhelmed with stress or high attrition rate, our team of psychologists that provide counseling also provide an internal consultancy. So what we do is that we get invited in and we explore with the stakeholders what the issues are. We do a needs analysis, like we may run a survey that measures different things: depressive, anxiety symptoms, well-being, resilience, burnout. We may also do focus group conversations to find out what the issues are in the departments. From there, we identify, develop, and design strategies on how to improve well-being, reduce burnout and attrition rates in the departments, and then we implement and evaluate. Something novel that we also do that many organizations around the world have not looked into, but NUS has, is our return to work framework and process. Essentially, if a staff member has had difficulties with mental health and therefore have had to take extended medical leave or no pay leave at times, but they want to come back to work in NUS, how do we reintegrate them back into the system? So we do have care managers who look into this, who partner with that staff member and also collaborate with our HR department or the faculties and the departments that the staff member belong to see how we can help them reintegrate back into the workplace. Sometimes it may have to do with a job resizing. Perhaps they can't handle the stress of the roles that they were carrying out prior to their mental health concerns escalating. So we may do talk about job resizing, job redesigning, or transfer them to a different role or different department that they can find the work manageable. Finally, we do have an active social media outreach for our staff and students, and you can follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. to catch up with our initiatives, activities, and our social media kind of posts that we are putting out on a regular basis. For the work that we have done, we've actually received lots of external validation. We have won awards from the Work Well Leaders, HR Excellence Award, Singapore Health Award, and Global Healthy Workplace Award. This just is a testament to the amount of resource that NUS has put into health and well-being. We still have much to learn, and we are connecting with other organizations to learn from them, and they are learning from us as well. We've also been cited by Work Well Leaders, and in February of this year, we were cited by Parliament as an example of a comprehensive, a place that has a comprehensive way of addressing mental health concerns for students and staff in an organization or institution. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you for your time. I'll hand the time back to our MC or back to Prof. Kwa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goh. I didn't realize there's so many facilities. And I think that one of the persons we must thank is also the chairman of the NUS Board of Trustees, Mr. Sia Pu Hua, very proactive and pro-mental health. As I'm listening to you, there's a message from someone from SUTD, one of the executives, Mr. Jonathan Kwa. He mentioned they're also organizing a lot of activities for the students, and I'm very glad things are moving well with other universities here. Our next speaker is Dr. Lynette Tan. So much thanks to Go again. Dr. Lynette Tan is from RC4, Residence College number 4, and she's a lecturer down there and has many interests besides teaching. She's also keen on an environment, also on drama. And so far, we're listening to talks about what we are doing or what is the prevalence. The most important thing is, can we intervene to bring it down? That's what the world is looking for translational research. So Lynette Tan and his colleagues have done 2 wonderful studies. So Lynette, you can start off now.
Thank you very much, Prof. Kwa. Yeah, so I'm Lynette. I'm from RC4 and I'm also from Lighthouse at NUS. So I'm going to be talking about mental resilience on our NUS community. And specifically, I'm going to talk about 2 innovative research projects that we have done to grow mental resilience in our NUS undergraduates and also facilitate social cohesion. We heard from Prof. John just now about how important it is to have student life and interaction and community. So this is where social cohesion comes in. So they are the therapeutic rainforest study and Unforgotten. So the first study, the therapeutic rainforest study, takes our NUS undergraduates to the Kentridge Forest and trains them to apply mindfulness as they walk. Whereas Unforgotten is a musical which is based on Kwai Hyok's Listening to Letter from America that mitigates ageism and mental illness stigma. So the therapeutic rainforest study. As you can see, I'm leading the study together with my co-investigators, Mark Gunn, Alex, and Sean. Sean is actually leading the quantitative section of the study. I'm leading the qualitative. And this was motivated by the declining mental health of our undergraduates during COVID. Prof. John has talked about that earlier as well. And also 2 oppositional contexts. And the first context is that of rapid urbanization. So more than half of our global population now lives in artificial constructed settings, and this has led to a decline in mental health because of the other context, which is biophilia. So biophilia was popularized by Kellett and Wilson in 1995, and that is a condition where as living beings, when we interact and engage with nature, then we are able to thrive. And if we have prolonged exposure to artificially constructed settings, then our physical and mental health tends to decline. So because of this, we were motivated to launch this study. So our study design was inspired by a similar study done by Prof. Kwa Hyok and his co-investigators, and they published a book about it in 2020 called Nature, Health and Happiness, where they took a group of seniors into the rainforest and trained them to walk mindfully in the rainforest. And after they walked in the rainforest, they found that their mental and physical health improved. And so we thought we would do the same for our NUS undergraduates. So between August 2021 and November 2022, and you can see these are the COVID years, we conducted this study. We had over 100 participants to begin with, but because of attrition due to COVID, the number dropped to 78. And we had 3 arms in the randomized control trial. The first arm was those who walked mindfully in the rainforest. The second arm was where they walked in the rainforest without mindfulness. And the third arm was where they walked along the UTown campus with mindfulness as well. And we had 2 research instruments, connectedness with nature. This is Lee and Robbins, and social connectedness. This is Maya and Franz. And we also had 6 open-ended questions in the survey. So this is an overview of our results. So social and nature connectedness actually improved over time. For social connectedness, the results reached significance. For connectedness to nature, the results did not reach significance, and I have an explanation for that. It is a limitation of the study, and maybe we can take that in the Q&A if anybody's interested. For the open-ended questions, mindfulness ranked as the most impactful for what students found in the study. And these are the descriptive statistics. You can see I have the 3 arms: mindful forest walking, and mindful urban walking, and it's all upward trending. T1 is the start of the intervention, T7 is at the end. So social connectedness improved from 32.1 to 33.1. These are all mean scores. The best possible score is actually 40, so it started off quite high already. And for connectedness to nature, for mindful forest walking was 29.1 to 30.8. For all the 3 arms, actually, it was upward trending, but for mindful forest walking, it received the highest stats, 33.1 and 30.8 at the end. And to calculate the significant difference, we use ANOVA. And you can see for social connectedness, the p-value is 0.003. It means the treatment was significantly different across the 3 arms. But when you look at connectedness to nature, the p-value is 0.108. So this shows that it was not significantly different. Right, so what we observed as well was that there is a possible correlation, a positive correlation between connectedness with nature and social connectedness. This is something we found in the earlier study as well, the preliminary study to this one, and we hope to pursue it further. There are very few articles on this connection or this correlation. There is one in 2020 that was conducted with a group of children, but we hope to pursue this in our next study. Right, so now to Unforgotten. So Unforgotten is another research study that I'm leading. It's based on a musical performance that was performed in July this year that our NUS undergraduates participated in. So that's me with the artistic director, and next to him is Prof. Von Bing and Beth Chan, who is my RA. So the musical is written by Prof. Kwai Hyok. It's called Listening to Letter from America. It's about his experiences with some mentally ill patients. So the study was conducted from May 2023. It's still ongoing. We have 89 participants out of a maximum total of 100. We have 2 arms. It's not a randomized control trial because we had to select participants who could go and watch the musical. So we had to separate them out that way. And we had 2 research instruments, an aging semantic differential, and that was Rosencrantz and McNevin. And we had a characteristic scale by Penn et al., which was also a semantic differential. And for this study, we conducted focus group discussions. And the focus group discussions are ongoing because it's semi-longitudinal. We had the focus group discussion immediately after the performance, and now 3 months later, we're about to do the second batch. So this is an overview of our results. So basically, there was a reduction of ageism and mental illness stigma after the intervention. So for stigma associated with the elderly or ageism, the results reached significance. And for stigma associated with the mentally ill, the results did not reach significance. But again, I have an explanation and I can talk about that in the Q&A if needed. And the focus group discussion showed a more positive attitude towards the elderly, notably grandparents, and an increased awareness of post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. So these are our results. For attitudes towards the elderly, lower scores indicate reduced stigma because in the scale where we have polarities, autonomous is a more positive attribute. So the positive attributes on the left and the negative attributes were on the right. So lower score means reduction of stigma. And these are the constructs that the variables landed into. For the most important line is the red line, that's the test group. For the blue line, it's the control group, it's the group that did not watch the musical. And as you can see, pre-intervention and post-intervention, there was a reduction of stigma in the test group, but in the control group, there was actually an increase in stigma over the same time. And for instrumental ineffective, which was another construct, you can see, again, there is a decrease in stigma with the test group. With the control group, the line basically stayed the same. This was the same for the personal acceptability and unacceptability construct, where there was a decline of stigma in the test group, but the control group was practically a straight line. And this is for our attitudes towards the mentally ill from Penn et al. You can see, well, the higher scores indicate more favorable attitudes because in the bipolar adjective pairs, the negative attributes were on the left, weak on the left, strong on the right. And you can see stigma reduced for mental illness. For the test group, again, it is the red line. It's slightly increased, it's slightly reduced for the control group as well, but not as drastically. And we conducted ANCOVA and found that for attitudes towards the mentally ill, there was no significant difference, but for attitudes towards the elderly, there was a significant difference. So these are our focus group discussion results. Basically, there was an increase in empathy towards the elderly and awareness of PTSD. So we took feedback from 3 participants here to show you. And participant A says that we should respect the views of the elderly, even though we may disagree with them. We might think there is a generation gap, but we shouldn't discriminate against them based on that generational gap. It shouldn't be an excuse for us to isolate them. And participant B says, this is where the engagement with the grandparents is important. My grandparents don't really speak about their past, and they realize that maybe I haven't tried hard enough to ask them about it or get them to open up about it. And this shows that there is an increased desire for the participant to connect with their grandparents. And participant C says, it has opened my eyes to what PTSD is like, what causes it, and how long lasting it can be. So these are our tentative conclusions that practicing walking in the rainforest with mindfulness leads to pro-social behavior and thus increased sociality, which is so important for the student life that Prof. John Wong was talking about earlier. And also edutainment containing narratives destigmatizing the elderly and mental illness can be effective in positively changing social attitudes. And as Singapore is about to become a super age nation in 2026, and we learn from healthy longevity experts globally, actually in the talk where they came down and visited NUS this year, it is ageism, which is the greatest inhibitor to healthy longevity. So if edutainment can help with that, it will be very instrumental. Yeah, thank you. That's my last slide.
So thank you, Lynette. I think that the study on changing attitude from a musical is probably the first study in the world. And I think that's wonderful, and we hope, in a way, to encourage our students to attend concerts and musicals. Now, I have a few slides to show all of you on what we have done so far on campus mental health. And the first slide is on a study we conducted some years ago comparing law students and medical students on the mental health. Next slide, please. So you see that comparing both, you see that the medical students seem to have higher stress level, some symptoms of anxiety and depression compared to the law students. And remember, it's 57% is very high. This was done a month after they came to medical school and a month after they came to law school. But after 6 months with discussion and workshop, the level came down to about 20%, which is still high, but okay, you know. But you see that adjustment is something that we can help them out in terms of intervention. But also, besides the students, we have a lot of staff, academic staff who have mental health problems, and they come to see my clinic, NUH. And they are not just the lecturers from NUS, but also other universities here in Singapore and the region itself. They come down even to see me in my private clinic. And these are the conditions we have. So you see that the highest is still depression and anxiety. But there's a looming number of people who come to see me, but do not have a mental illness per se. There are people who are almost like burnt out here, whether it's because of their work or because of the pandemic. But we also have a few lecturers who have psychosis, schizophrenia, or bipolar. And after being treated, they carry on being very good lecturers in the university. I must tell you that. So the good news is many of the mental illnesses treatable and they still function very well. In fact, we have also two who are very young university lecturers from the region itself referred to my clinic for a second opinion in the very early 50s with early dementia. So these are the staff, and as you heard from Mr. Goh, there's also something to be done for the staff. So you see that the university is the facilities are not just for the students and the staff, but also the big group of admin support. You know, I'm sitting in the room and I'm supported by 4 other admin staff. They're so important. Without them, we cannot have this particular webinar. You know, so what have they done? So in NUS, is there the Faculty of Medicine? A few of them came to see me about what they can do to improve their mental health. They are led by the leader, Mr. Seng, and we've had something on the therapeutic rainforest. We walked through the rainforest of Cambridge Park, and they were so happy. They learned not only about the trees, but also learned about themselves, and also learn about how to manage people who are smarter than them. You know? So that's very, very important things for them to learn along the way. So I want to stop now, and now it's question time. Professor John Wong is there? Right. There are some people who ask some questions here now, and they're asking me that, well, coming to university is a very competitive place. You've got a ton of top students of elite schools here in Singapore, but also from the region itself. They come down. At one time, I was in charge of the admission for medical students. We have students applying from as far as Australia, from China, India. And here are a ton of top students, right? So the question we can ask you is, John, when you were a student here, how do you cope? What do you do? How do you cope so well?
I'm not too sure whether I cope well, but I survived. So I guess at the end of the day, it's really a conversion of the various demands that impinge on the individual during the particular course of study, a particular period of time, and how one makes sense of the reasons of being there. I think reasons of being there for a program, for a course of study, or for a particular task is very important. Remember one slide I shared was really the sense of purpose. I think while it may sound a little bit spiritual, but I think it is a key element of resilience. When we have a sense of purpose, we have a sense of reason of being there to do a task or do a program, that gives us the much needed strength to overcome whatever adversity that just comes from time to time. Yeah.
All right. John comes from one of the elite school. He has a purposeful life. Most of us will just. I went to medical school because my mother wanted one of his sons to do medicine. That's all. And what about you, Mr. Goh? I'm sure you went to a good time in the the Department of Psychology. Tell us how do you cope, Mr. Go?
Yeah, how I cope as a student. Well, first of all, well-being is a holistic thing, right? It has to do with not just your mental well-being, your physical well-being, your social well-being, and so on. So for me, fortunately, I had a lot of a group of friends that I was connected well with. I was involved in church and doing lots of activities there. That was helpful to me. There was a rule that I had actually as a university student that unless there's some deadline that I need to meet, after 10 p.m. I try to stop doing any work. So from 10 to 11 or to midnight, whatever time I fell asleep, then I would just relax, do something to relax. That helped me very much. And of course, having some sort of self-care, self-compassion is important. Just, learn to cut yourself some slack, recognizing that university is in fact a stressful time, and sometimes we just need to give ourselves a break. Yeah.
Yes. You're right, Mr. Go. I think learning from friends is very, very important. In fact, yesterday 2 days ago, I saw one of the NUS students, and I told her that you can learn a lot from your colleagues. And don't be afraid. Because I come from a small town in Malaysia, when I went up to KL, the students that come from the big cities like KL and Penang, they come from Penang Preschool, Victoria Institution. They're very good students. So I often tell them, I'm not very good. Can you tell me? You teach me. So they are usually the women, girls in our class they are the top students. They know everything. So they will tell you everything about all the cranial nerves, and you learn from them. So don't be afraid to learn. Lynette, tell me that your studies, do the students using the facilities we have here in NUS, sports, we have Yong Suto Orchestra, and in your RC4, are they using all these wonderful facilities here at NUS?
They're definitely doing that. And, from what Prof. John Wong was sharing earlier, they have a vibrant student life, not only at RC4, but also Lighthouse at NUS. They have all kinds of interest groups and communities of practice, and they're always getting together and doing what they love, which is important, and also doing what gives them purpose. So some of them have outreach to the elderly, or to giving free tuition to students, to underprivileged students, and so forth. Yeah.
Excellent. Is it partly because your RC4 chairman, is it? Chairman is Professor Chu Xiaobing, who is always down there helping the students and being part of the team. Does it help?
Prof. Chu is our rector. Yeah, our master is Prof. Peter Pang. Yeah, so he's in charge of the studies and the student life here.
Yeah, yeah. There's someone who raised his hand, but before that, I want to ask Mr. Go and also John. What the students are asking me is confidentiality. Uh, our records there confidential? Do people hack in to find out who is seeing Professor John Wong ADHD and that kind of thing? How 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 good is our system itself in terms of confidentiality?
Okay, maybe I'll go first, then I'll hand over to Mr. Go. I think the medical records confidentiality is very much guided and regulated by the medical ethics, professional ethics, as well as the PDPA. I think that's very clear. Any violation of PDPA can be severely dealt with and punished, be it a professional or the outsider. So I think that is something where if the medical information is reposited in an official system, I think our assurance is that for government or for official university system, we are all obliged to comply fully with PDPA. So I think that's our assurance. But of course, at times system may still break down because there may be illegal hacking and sometimes negligence. But those are occurrences which are exceptional. It can happen, but it's exception rather than the routine. With regards to private records, medical records, I think Prof. Kwai, you can speak a bit more about private records. But I understand from my colleague out there, essentially is that they have to ensure that the medical records, whether it's pen and paper, whether it's electronic, they are required to lock it under safe custody. And similarly, they have to observe PTPA. So I think our fear is most of the time our patients or public's fear are to they will have to understand that there is a larger system that regulate information control, but there can be occurrences of lapses. I think that is the kind of risk that we have to recognize. But I think what they are afraid at times is really because of convenience, that one department may get to know another department's information because it is in the same organization. I think that part again, before PDPA was implemented, I think the fear was quite frequently voiced and experienced. But with PDPA being in place, I think we could be assured that that actually is a gross violation of PDPA. Yeah, I hand over to Mr. Goh.
Yes. So carry on, Mr. Carry on.
Yeah, just real quickly to echo what Prof. John has already said. Medical and mental health professionals have a very high level of confidentiality that we need to ensure. Within the organizations that have a clinic or case management system, usually, so for us, our IT department ensures that we need a 2FA to log into the system. And they also do penetration testing to make sure that people can't just easily hack into these systems. In regards to whether the records get shared among different departments, definitely no. So for us, only the counselors have access to the medical records in the medical record system that we use. Even UHC, our doctors, our psychiatrists cannot access your counseling records and vice versa. So anything that is discussed should be in, with the consent of the client that we are seeing. With the one exception where the risk of harm to self and others is high, extremely high and imminent, that would be the only time that confidentiality will be broken. And in most cases, we will still discuss with the client just to make sure that they are informed, just to ensure that their safety is upheld.
Yes, the point that the research that done by Lynette is that stigma is still there and it hangs in there. And people are fearful and petrified. But I'll tell you that things are improving, and I've seen some professors come and see me and in the clinic and all that, and they are very eager to come for help. There's a question from someone who said, how can we help more students self-train their resilience? How can we help more students self-train their resilience? Professor John Wong, you'll go to it first. Help more students self-train.
Okay, I think it's quite similar to what I have answered in the Q&A. Let me just pull out the answer. I think self-trained resilience, I think at the end of the day, there are a few important considerations. Let me just pull out the response. Oh, yes. So I think to build personal resilience, I think one must have that level of mental health literacy. We must see the need, right? If you don't see the need, then it's very hard to motivate yourself to do something. Second is really seeing the need is that we must see ourselves. We must be able to profile ourselves and discover ourselves. So self-profiling or profiling will be very useful exercise. And then the third is really self-determination and invest in ourselves. This is where action takes place. Because to build resilience, it's like going to the gym and build the six packs. I think it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of effort, but it's well worth the while. So the question is that we got to go into the action phase. And but of course, external factor that I always like to use the analogy of going to a gym. Not that I go to the gym a lot, but I always admire people who go to the gym. Is that you go with a pack, or you go with your friends. There's this community there, right? And then you compare your muscle, you compare your packs, and I think it energizes them to work a bit harder. So building student life on and off campus, I think you do it alone, I think it'll be tough. But if you are part of a caring community and support system of resilience, I think it will be a lot easier. Yeah.
Okay.
Over to you,
Mr.
Prof.
Goh or Lynette, anything to add on that? Okay,
Uh,
guys.
yeah, sure. Just quickly also, in terms of building resilience, there are lots of resources out there. So if you're talking about self-training, of course, not every resource is good, but there are a lot of mental health apps, for example, where they give you like mindfulness exercises or recommendations for things you can do. Even Dr. Lynette and Prof. Wong already talk, or Prof. Kwa already talk about forest walking. These simple steps that you can take, right, to walking in the forest with friends or colleagues or classmates. These are simple steps to improve your social well-being as well as connecting with nature, and coming into a relaxed environment. So simple things like exercise can help, listening to music that uplifts you can help, connecting with people can help. These are ways to develop your resilience. There's a good book on developing resilience also called Flourish by Martin Seligman, a famous psychologist. So you can check that out, and it gives lots of tips. But of course, you have to read through a book in order to do that, to find out that information.
Maybe
Okay,
I'll
so
get on
oh,
to Lynette and also with Professor John Wong. One of the issues, I'll say the elephant in the room, the students will tell me that there's so much to read. Um, are we one of the stressors and the work we pile on our students? You know, is there something that can be done? Lynette, let's get on to you first, RC4 lecturer.
okay. I wanted to answer something about the previous question actually about how to help students to grow resilience, right? Just quickly co-create with them. So we have students who are peer supporters themselves, who are coaches and mentors at both RC4 and Lighthouse, and we get student-initiated movements. It's much more helpful than top-down. Okay, so what was the other question again? Sorry, Prof. Kwa.
On helping the students in terms of the workload.
Oh yeah, the workload. So I'm director of studies at RC4. In terms of the curriculum, I know that we have a limited number of pages that we can give students for reading for each course that we do. So we try to reduce workload, and we actually look at the number of hours students need to spend on the course, and we also make that consistent across all the courses so that we don't overload them.
Professor John Wong, what can we do in faculty of medicine?
Sorry, your question again. I was
The
answering your
workload,
question.
the workload is enormous. It weighs heavily on their shoulders.
Oh, I see. Okay. I learned a lot from the medical students because I mean we work with them, we conduct classes for them. I realized that it does take an entire generation of students, batches after batches, to really build a kind of mentorship for the senior to tell the junior what is important, what is less important. But most importantly, there are somehow among every batch of medical student and their subsequent graduate, there will always be the very, very brilliant students who are very altruistic. They actually make wonderful notes, and they are very, very generous to share their notes, and to the point that they not just share their notes, they teach them after they leave and they school. So is this senior mentoring junior and producing, I call this bird nest effect. After they've digested all the hard facts, they produce a bird nest. They pass the bird nest to the younger students, their juniors, and they can assimilate the digested information much faster and much quicker. So I would say that I think what we need to recognize in today's learning is not so much of curating and hoarding lots of knowledge and information, but is to really to be able to distill knowledge and information that are critical and relevant and impactful. And how can we not just keep it to ourselves, but pass on to people around us or junior after us? And that essentially will make the learning a lot more fun, because we are here to acquire knowledge, but not to hoard knowledge. So I guess I learned a lot from observing the younger cohort of medical students, where they have a lot more to remember and learn compared to our times, but yet they can do so much better. And not because they are smarter, I mean, they are definitely smarter, but they have a lot of smart and altruistic and generous seniors.
So thank you, Professor John Wong. The Mind Science Center is research program. It's not just to do research to tell you the problems. We also do intervention, just like what you listened from Dr. Lynette Tan's work on intervention in the rainforest walk to bring it down, the stress level, and also the musical study. So, for example, what Professor John Wong mentioned of the high score amongst the students in Singapore, the PISA score. My question is, so what is that? What happened to these students when they go to working life? Or what happened to our NUS students? The cost of training the doctors, the medical students is tremendous. And it weighs heavily in all of us taxpayers. And people ask along the corridors of power, what happened to these people when they leave NUS? Are they coping well? Are they contributing to the community in terms of volunteerism or others, people donors? So these are the long-term things that the Mind Science Center we studying on, the change of human behavior and values. So I think these are the question. I hope, Mr. Go, you have lots of students who are with you. Maybe we could think of somebody can do a PhD with you, do a long-term study. Those who come to your programs, what happened after 20 years? Do they go on to become future prime minister of the country? And if the prime minister, are they very caring people? That's what we look for, isn't it, in our research. It's not for the fun that we can get published in Nature and get promoted, but it's something of relevance to the country. And everyone talk about the Harvard study. The Harvard study, by the way, is a very biased study. All the Harvard men, many white men, and no women. So anyways, you can get all these studies and find out what happened to them. Well, Harvard has got 70 years. We have a 71 years, Mr. Go, and then we can tell them we are a bit better than you folks. And they tell us if we can have students who are caring and signs of a sense of compassion, empathy, then the country will be a better place. Rather than say we are so competitive, people will run away from the country. Some people will want to exit and live somewhere else. But the university is a wonderful place. It's tremendous learning, as Professor John Wong mentioned. Very bright people here. Even this room is surrounded by very bright people, and they're all helping us in this webinar. So I want to thank all of you who are listening in. We cannot answer all your questions. If you can send your question to us, and we'll ask the three speakers to try and reply to all of you. I hope I don't spoil your weekend, John and Lynette and Mr. Go. But I think it's a wonderful session. I really enjoy listening to all your presentation. There's so much work done by all of you, and especially in our NUS now. And I'm sure other universities, we hope if you have anything that we can share with all of you, you want more information, you can bring up Mr. Go, you want some research, Lynette is there, you want overall studies of Mind Science Center, there are people listening from Australia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and China, they can come back to us. So hand out to the MC now, Cindy, who will say some parting words to all of you.
Yeah, thank you. A big thank you to all speakers for today. Thank you, Prof. Wong. Thank you, Prof. Hua, Dr. Lynette, and Mr. Go. Due to time constraints, there are some questions left unanswered, but don't worry, we will look at these questions, and as Prof. Hua mentioned, we might do an article feature with the speaker's response. With that, we have come to the end of the 8th South Yang Feng Distinguished Lecture Series. Once again, I would like to express our greatest gratitude to everyone for joining us today. We certainly hope that this session has renewed a passion in all our hearts to prioritize our mental well-being. Thank you and have a nice day.